prepare ourselves, if you put your hand over your eyes, I open my eyes to see the spiritual truth today.
I open my eyes to see the spiritual truth today.
Now your ears, open my ears to hear the spiritual truth today.
I open my ears to hear the spiritual truth today.
Now if you put your hand over your heart and extend out your arms, I open my heart to receive the spiritual truth today.
I open my heart to receive the spiritual truth today.
The spiritual truth that I'm working with today is that we live in a divinely ordered universe. We live in a divinely ordered universe. We have light during the day and darkness at night. We have a corresponding reaction for every action that we send out. In the meanest neighborhood, in the saddest sidewalk, you can find the tiniest crack in a sidewalk and watch a dandelion come through. Because the energy of good will always have victory over the energy of the experience of evil in our lives. We live in a divinely ordered universe. And when we can open up to that and understand that there's no God in the sky pulling strings, that we live in an energy of good, that when we recognize it and we harmonize with it and when we're congruent with it, our lives are fabulous. They're fantastic lives in our lives. Now here's the thing. We can call this energy whatever we want. We can also call it spiritual principles. And that's what I'm talking about today, is our spiritual principles. Another name for God. I call it God's operating system. Spiritual principles. And when we can learn spiritual principles and become unified with those spiritual principles, life is great. It's absolutely great. They're learnable. They're changeable. They're changeless, I mean. Spiritual principles are learnable and changeless. And that should be important to us, particularly in this time of the world changing so fast. We can barely keep up with how fast this world is changing in technology, in our ideas, in our mores, in every way, in our culture, every way. The world is just changing so fast, but God never changes. Spiritual principles never change. We can always rely on them. We can always take those principles to the bank. But in order to harmonize ourselves with spiritual principles, we have to have spiritual practices. That's how we do it. And so today, I want to look at spiritual practices, 4 of them, that are available to us in this little book called The 4 Agreements, written by a man named Don Miguel Ruiz. Now, many of you are familiar with these 4 agreements. Some of you have read the book. Others have heard me talk about them before. Others have heard other people talk about them before. But here's the problem. Once we hear this, we tend to put these kinds of books back on the shelf. And this is a book we need to get out every single year, dust off, and begin to read it again, and not only read it, but contemplate it and study it, because it has such wisdom for us. Now, like all New Thought wisdom, all wisdom, it all comes from ancient wisdom, and the Toltecs are an ancient people with an ancient story to tell. Now, a lot of people think that Toltecs is a race or an ethnicity. It's not. It's a society. It's a society of Mexicans, when Mexico was much bigger than it is now. When it was part of Texas, part of California, part of Arizona, it had a group of people who were scientists and musicians, scientists and artists who came together. And you know, science and art are very closely aligned in the brain. And so these scientists and artists came together, formed a society for one reason only: to begin to better understand the divinely ordered universe and our place in this divinely ordered universe, how we can get along in this divinely ordered universe. Well, Don Miguel Ruiz was a physician in Mexico. He had a very bad car accident. And you know, whenever we have a major event in our life, sometimes it takes us in a direction we never saw coming. And that's true of Don Miguel Ruiz. He never intended to be a Toltec Wise One. But because of his lineage and because of this new perspective that this accident had given us, he went back and studied those ways. And from those studies, he wrote this book called The Four Agreements. Very practical way of improving our lives. Now, usually I take an entire month, and I usually take the month of November because here's what I think about this book. If we were to study this book, our holiday season will be so much happier if we will begin to look at this book and keep it fresh, firm before us as we go out into this December month for all the holidays that are happening then. So the first one is called Be Impeccable with Your Word. Be impeccable with your word. Now, on the surface, it looks like Don Miguel Ruiz was talking to us about lying. He was not. It's a much deeper concept than that. But because that's where our mind goes about lying, I want to share with you my belief about lying. My belief about lying is that all lying comes from fear. Every single lie you have ever told or ever will tell comes from the fact that you are having some experience of fear in your life. See, it all comes from not feeling good enough. Somebody told us we weren't enough. It comes from you're afraid you're going to hurt somebody else's feelings, so you tell a lie. You tell a lie because you think you screwed up and somebody else might find out about it. You tell a lie because you don't think you're worthy if they really knew who I was. Most of us have experienced that kind of lie, where we've embellished ourselves. You don't need to embellish yourself. You are the very presence of God on this planet. There's nothing, you don't need to embellish God, and you don't need to embellish you, because you are simply no more than the presence of God on the planet. You are not all of God. We can't even wrap our heads around all God is. But God is all of you. And when we begin to understand that, we know we don't have to lie. We don't have to have any embellishments in our lives. See, we don't have to. And the next time you have a lie experience, and we all have them. They're usually little lies. Sometimes it's a whopper, but usually it's a little lie. Next time you have that, ask yourself, what fear am I feeling right now that made me tell that lie? And see what happens with you. And if you absolutely can't figure out the fear, call a practitioner and say, you know what? Reverend Georgia said all lie comes from fear, and I just told a whopper. Can you help me figure out what I'm afraid of? And they'll work with you. They're not magicians, but they'll work with you to uncover that which you already know in your life. But see, that's not what Don Miguel was actually talking about. What Don Miguel was talking about was being impeccable with your word, which we have here as the synonym for intention. You know, word doesn't have anything to do, the word doesn't have anything to do with your verbal skills. It might involve them, but it might not. It's not even language. It's not about language. You know, John in chapter 1 said, in the beginning there was the Word, and the Word was with God. And then he gave us the real teaching in the third verse, which is, the Word is God. See, in this church, we believe a synonym for word is intention. In the beginning was your intention. And that's what we need to learn to be impeccable with, is our intention in our life. Be impeccable with the understanding that the presence of God, which is the Word, that's what John tells us. God is the Word. Be impeccable with that presence in your life. Don't throw it away. Don't defile it. Don't shortchange it. And this is not about good or bad. This is about you creating the kind of life that you want in your world. It's about you stating what it is that you want to bring forth from yourself. The easiest nutshell version of this is the way you finish the phrase, I am, Remember that from the Bible when Moses and God said, who I am? The way you finish that word will tell you how impeccable you are with your word. I am smart is impeccable. I am dumb. You're not being impeccable with your word. I live in a world that is abundance. That's impeccable. I'm always poor. That is not impeccable with your word. Be impeccable with your word. As your mother used to say, my mother used to say it anyway, watch your language, young lady. Be impeccable with your word. The second thing is, don't take things personally. And if there's one thing we all want to walk out of here with today, it's understanding, don't take things personally. Now, here is the thing. I do not like ministers who talk out of both sides of their mouths. I went to enough of them when I was a kid. I don't want to do it as an adult. I certainly don't want to do it to you. You know, those ministers that say, God loves everybody, but some of you are going to hell. You know, that kind of minister. I don't want to do that. Talking out of both sides of my mouth doesn't help anybody, but I'm going to do it today. I'm going to talk out of both sides of my mouth. I'm going to say, do take things personally and don't take things personally. So let's start with Don Miguel Ruiz, what he really intended with this in the book. When somebody says something to you that is hurtful, either because they're unconscious or because they're feeling inadequate and they want company, and that's most often what happens. Somebody else is feeling inadequate in some area and they want some company, so they say something bad to you. Understand this, it is a gigantic call for love. And the only response we need to have is to give love back to it. It is not to internalize it. It is to simply give love back to that situation. Because here's what happens. We're always agreeing with things all the time. And that's why he calls these agreements. See, we're agreeing with things every minute of every day. And what we're saying here is, be careful what you're agreeing with. Don't agree with things that people are saying that are hurtful to you. When things go bad, you don't need to go with them. You can just stand your ground. But I wouldn't be your minister. I wouldn't be your minister if I also didn't say, when somebody says something to you that is hurtful, take it very personally. Take it very personally. In Genesis chapter 50, it says this, what man means for evil, God means for good. What man means for evil, God means for good. When somebody says something that hurts you, know this about yourself. You are ready for a major healing right now. You just got ready for a big old healing. See, if somebody calls me a bad teacher, it just rolls off my shoulders because I know I'm a good teacher. And so it's like, talk to the head. Just keep going. Go ahead, talk as much as you want because I'm not taking it in. It's not hurting my feelings. It's not even getting inside my consciousness. On the other hand, I've reached a certain age that if I'm not careful, I can get my feelings hurt by what people say to me in terms of my age when they attach it to some sort of limitation. You know what I mean? And typically what happens is I begin to agree with them. Why? Because I haven't healed it up in myself. And when I heal it up in myself, it'll be the same as anything else you've called me, anybody's called me throughout my life. It'll just roll off me when I heal it. You know, I told you, those of you who were here last week, you can see that I'm wearing a boot. I wore a boot because I had an old bucket list that made me want to try surfing. And Donna and I were in Hawaii, and for some reason, I thought it would be a good idea to try surfing. It was not a good idea. Well, actually, it was a good idea. It was a good idea. But what happened is I made two. I never intended to stand up on the board. I only intended to ride the wave on the board, and I did it twice, and it was heaven, absolute heaven. And the third time, the board went up and hit me in the heel. Better the heel than the head. I realized I'm lucky in that way. So when I have told people this, because they see the boo, what's wrong, what happened, about 85% will then follow up with, Do you know how old you are? Or some version of that. Like, gosh, wouldn't you be better off paddleboarding, or wouldn't you be better off in an inner tube, or didn't they have a pool at the, you know? I expected them to ask if they had a Hoyer lift at the pool. And so what happens when I do that, because I haven't healed all of my internalized ageism, what happens when that happens is I have a reaction. And it's not a positive reaction. It doesn't uplift my life. What uplifts my life is looking at my hurts, all of them, and beginning to understand that when anybody ever hurt me, the only response I should be giving them is thank you. Because you just gave me an opportunity to heal. You gave me an opportunity to look at what somebody else is doing to define who I am in my life. Without taking it personally, I can't do that in my life. So I have to learn how to say thank you. Thank you for calling me a dyke. Thank you for calling me fat. Thank you for not paying back the money that you borrowed from me. Thank you for gossiping behind my back. Because you've just given me an opportunity to heal my life. To understand at the deepest level I can understand that I am the presence of God. And talk to the hand. Because I'm making a new agreement with the Holy Spirit. That I'm whole, perfect, and complete in every way in my life. And you can do that too. The third one is don't make assumptions. Do not make assumptions. Now, what we're talking about here is stop looking at facts when you're trying to interpret the divinely ordered universe and start looking only at truth. The truth is we live in an abundant society, in an abundant universe. The fact is my money's a little tight right now. The truth is I am whole, perfect, and complete. The fact is I have a little dis-ease in my body right now. The truth is love is the only real power on this planet. The fact is, I see a lot of discord on the planet. But there's no healing in the discord. There's no healing in the dis-ease. There's no healing in the limited income thinking. There's only healing in the truth, not in the facts in our lives. He tells a great story in this book about a woman who is standing in a great department store, and she looks across a rack of clothing, and she sees this man, and he looks up when she's looking at him, and he smiles at her. And from that moment, she goes on to determine their first date, what their first kiss will feel like, what will happen after the first kiss, what will happen when they have kids, what their kids will look like. All from that one look. He's not saying don't dream. Don't dream of a mate. If you want a mate, don't dream of a mate. But be careful. Don't make assumptions about what's going on in your life. And the last one is always do your best. Always do your best. What he's talking about is do your best with the first three. He's talking about do your best with being impeccable with your word. Understand that you're going to make mistakes sometimes. Sometimes you're going to do self-negative talk. Don't beat yourself up. We're not looking for perfectionism here. We're looking for always do your best. Always do your best when you don't take things personally, but sometimes you're going to take things personally and you're going to blame, instead of thanking them and getting on with the healing, you're going to blame them and blame others for your life. Just do your best. Always do your best when you don't make assumptions. We all make assumptions. We make them every day with every person we meet. I'm always amazed when I think something and then I hear somebody's true story and you're thinking, my God, that person is amazing. When a minute ago, I thought they were complete jerks. Because I made an about them. But just do your best. You're going to make mistakes. Just always do your best. I want to enlarge it though, and talk about always do your best with everything you do. Do it at your work, always do your best. With your family, always do your best. In your community life, always do your best. And I want to talk about just 5 quick things that we can begin to ingest in order to help us always do our best. The first one is keep your mind free of reasons you can't have what you want. Keep your mind free of reasons you can't have what you want. They're all around. You don't need them. Let them be out there. And when they start to creep into your consciousness, pick up the Science of Mind magazine or some other book and begin to read some positive things. The second one is understand that the word selfish is only in the devil's dictionary. The word selfish is only in the devil's dictionary in our life. You always do your best when you're doing things you like to do the most. Now, we're all going to do things we don't love doing on occasion. You know, we're going to go to some movie we don't want to go to because our beloved wants to go to it. We're going to, go eat food we don't want to. We're going to always do something. But keep 80 to 85% of everything you do what you'd like to do the best. And begin to see your life change. The third one is set a goal, and every morning when you wake up, determine what you want that day to be like for you. What do you want it to be? What do you want to be? How do you want to present to the world today? Before you even get out of bed, determine that. And I promise you that simple little step will improve your day just unbelievably. The fourth thing is give praise to yourself. We don't praise ourselves enough. We wait for other people to praise, and we try and manipulate other people to praise us. Praise yourself. Know that when you did a great parenting thing, and your little kid lights up, praise yourself. I just did a great thing. Whatever it is in your life that you're doing, make sure that you take a minute to praise yourself. Don't join the coulda, woulda, shoulda people. Just stay with, I did something good today. The last thing is allow other people to help you. Do you see what Azana did? She just modeled the sermon. She didn't have her glasses. She didn't have the prayer card. We'll talk about that later. But she asked for help. And you know what an honor it is to help other people? It's an honor. You all know that. You feel good when you help other people. So allow them to feel that good. Allow them to have the honor of helping you. And here's the trick. Do it before you need it. Do it before you need it. Get in the habit of allowing people to help you before you're in a jam. Because then it's much, much more difficult to help. Now, speaking of help, I'm going to invite all of you, in addition to the socks, any of you who have yarn laying around the house that you were going to take up knitting. Oh, you were going to knit a sweater, and you just couldn't wait to get those needles out, but you never got them out. And you still have yarn around the house. Will you bring it in? Because Jeanette Egan, one of our teachers in the public school system, is doing a project with her kids for the holidays, and she needs yarn. So next Sunday, bring in your yarn. And so, will that be soon enough, Jeanette? Yeah, okay, so we can do that. Let's take this message into prayer. Be sure and get this book. It's a fabulous book. Look how, for those of you who haven't ever read this book, just, sometimes I bring out Ernest Holmes, and that's heavy for me. But look how thin this book is. It will change your November. It will change your December. It will change your holidays. It will change your life. It's on Amazon, very inexpensive. All right, let's take this message into prayer. Knowing there's only one power, it's the power of love, and it just simply flows through me. I don't really need to say anything else. I just need to turn my attention to the understanding that God is always here, and I give thanks for that. I give thanks for the Board of Trustees of this community for creating an atmosphere in which we can laugh and love and play and learn together. I give thanks for all the people who come here. I give thanks for the businessman who comes here and says, you know what, I'm doing well in my business. There must be something more to life. I'm going over to welcome. We welcome you. We welcome the single mother who comes through those doors who's exhausted and wants to just have her kids in our church for an hour so she can have her little respite. Thank you for trusting your children with us, and welcome. To the transgender person who comes through those doors and wonders how it will be, we want you to know you are always welcome here. This is a church that love is building. I give thanks for that. I give thanks for the great hearts that are helping us to help others outside these walls. To our homeless brothers and sisters, I give thanks for that. I release this word into the law, together we say, and so it is.